Right, yeah, so that's me, Lindsay Jordan. As Tim said, I've just finished working for the University of Bath. I start a new job with the University of the Arts here in London on Monday. I'm still a student with the University of Bath, though. I'm doing an MA there. So I'll have connections there for, well, until I finish my MA, if that ever happens. You can follow me on Twitter, those of you who still have any battery life left and don't have to run to get trains to catch. It'd be great if we can have some kind of back-channel chat going. And also, if you feel the need to explain yourself in more than 140 characters, I've also got a blog as well, which I've very helpfully kind of preloaded a blog post about this, ready for your comments and ready to host a conversation, really. So my presentation is entitled The Social Revolution Needs You, and hopefully the title will become a bit, I'll just go back there. Hopefully the title will become a bit more obvious and kind of evident by the end of the presentation. But before I start, I'd just like to check, quickly, am I back? I'd just like to check quickly who I'm talking to here. Now, if you could put your hands up, who considers themselves an educator? Who works directly with students in teaching? Raise your hands. That's great. And who works directly with developing technology, learning technologies or other kinds of technology? Super. And which of you are kind of more involved with supporting the use of those technologies, either with students or with staff? About as many again. Okay, and which of you are not kind of, don't really fit into those categories, but you kind of lead or manage that kind of process? Not many managers. And which of you, how many of you would consider yourself as being active learners at the moment? Now, that might be on a formal learning program, or it might just be that you consider yourself as learning. Okay, super. Because the perspective that I'm really coming from today is not really so much as an educator, but more giving you my own kind of personal experience as a lifelong learner. You know, things that connected with my MA studies and also connected with my work in educational development. So I want to talk about social media and about how we, working in education, can you know, harness the power of social media in our work and our studies. I'm going to be drawing on some educational principles, some real explicit hardcore theory, which we haven't done yet today. And I'm also going to be, believe it or not, touching on some Buddhism, some Darwinian theory, some Greek philosophy, even a little bit of ancient Egyptian philosophy in there as well. And ultimately, I'm going to be showing you how social media can bring you happiness. Sounds great. So about 2 years ago, I started blogging, well, more than 2 years ago now, I started blogging about my work, and I thought, hey, it's going to be great. Everyone's going to read my blog and think I'm a wonderful person who does fantastic things for education and for learning. Now, this is something, of course, the Buddhists would be horrified at this blatantly self-cherishing behavior and thinking. But thankfully, no one read my blog at all at first. But very quickly, in fact, about halfway through my first post, I realized how the actual act of writing down my thoughts helped me to clarify and find solutions for the problems and challenges that I was facing. I'm just going to divert myself slightly here. You'll understand why in a bit, hopefully. Vygotsky, who some of you will probably have heard of, developmental psychologist for the programmers, was a very clever man who about 100 years ago was doing some very interesting work in the field of developmental psychology, which is very, very relevant to the things that are happening now in terms of social media. And he did a little experiment, which I'm going to tell you about. He got some small children, maybe about 5 or 4, and he put some sweets on a very high shelf. There were some basic tools in the room, a chair and a big long stick. And some of the children were allowed to talk as they solved the problem, i.e. get the sweets, and some of them were asked to remain silent. Now, the key thing here, the principle that he was exploring, was that children this young actually don't have the capacity to have internal speech. So without speech, their problem-solving capacity is comparable to that of apes. And true to that hypothesis, he found that the children who were allowed to talk got the sweets, and the children who weren't allowed to say anything at all didn't. I mean, the kids who were talking were like, well, I'll get this chair, and if I climb up on it, I still can't reach it, and maybe I have to get this big stick and give it a poke. You know, you can imagine the kind of thing. And what this illustrates to us, the main point here, the reason why I'm telling you this, is that words and language is essential to us for solving problems. The words basically provide a symbol for objects and actions and allow us to abstract the problem and find solutions that may not immediately be obvious. What I thought when I read about this was maybe our internal speech simply isn't organized enough to solve the more challenging problems that we face, and maybe that's why blogging why I'm finding it so useful. You know, it's actually helping me just clarify this problem and set it out and helping me to solve things. So to investigate this, I started a new blog, a blog about blogging, Metablog, get it? So, and I just started off kind of reading some stuff about reflection and even things like, you know, the effect of word processing on our thoughts as compared to writing, handwriting. And, you know, I just started kind of writing about this and thinking about it. And I learned a bit, and it was all good. But then a really interesting thing happened. People actually started reading my blog and commenting on it. And it totally changed the way I blogged. It totally changed the way I was using the thing and totally changed the learning process for me, because all of a sudden there were these people reading the blog and you know, bringing in their own perspectives, commenting on my perspectives, making me think about kind of whole different things and putting me in different directions. And I mean, this was fantastic. I mean, I came out of it just feeling that the learning experience I'd had from that was just so much fresher. The things I was learning just felt so much more relevant to me and to the people around me as well. And so at the end of this project, I came to a few conclusions about reflection and about the things about blogging that help reflection. And there's lots of things up there. I'm not going to read them all out. But these are also relevant to things like Twitter as well, and social bookmarking and other forms of social media. But the key element in a lot of these is the element of community, as many of our other speakers have touched on as well. Without community, you've just got personal reflection, which is great. It's useful for learning, but it just lacks the punch. It's like a tonic with no gin in it. So now, this is a bit of hardcore theory. Okay, bear with me here. There was some work done quite a few years ago now, about 10 years ago, by a guy called Randy Garrison and his colleagues. And there's been a lot of of talk in the academic literature since then about how Garrison's work relates to social learning in particular, because what Garrison did was he identified 3 key elements of learning activities. And when I say learning activities, I don't just mean, you know, a task that a teacher sets some students to do. I mean, kind of any activity that results in learning. And 2 of these elements were what he called cognitive presence and teaching presence. Cognitive presence just simply being the capacity of that activity to stimulate learning, to stimulate people coming together and constructing meaning out of something together. And teaching presence is, I mean, it's been interpreted in lots of different ways, but you could say that it's the ease with which, or the scope within the activity for the person leading or facilitating the process to design for certain outcomes. Yep. So, and this, I guess I'm showing this to you now because it explains, at least I think it helps to explain, and also to debunk the myths about why lots of people feel that social media and social learning is all very well in an informal context for people like me who are going out and doing their own learning and directing their own learning. But when you actually start to apply it within a formal institutional context, it brings lots of challenges. And I think this is one of the major challenges. We have an educational infrastructure that is very much based around set learning outcomes, and those learning outcomes are usually defined by content. And we could look at this and say, well, you know, this is a problem, this is a challenge, or we could turn it on its head and say, well, maybe this is an opportunity. And with this kind of learning, you know, this is our opportunity to kind of break free, I guess, from the shackles of content, from the notion that everything you need to know is in this book, and, you know, you don't need to know anything else. Nothing else is useful to you. Okay? So the third element that Garrison identified was something called social presence. And this obviously, is where social media is really, really relevant. And the essence of this, I won't bang on about it, but the essence of it is that where students are able to to present themselves as individuals and personalities, full identities, then that helps them to construct meaning together. And it also ups the enjoyment factor and the sense of fulfillment that I myself experienced when I started interacting with people through my blogs. I put a little reference up there because if you're interested in finding out about Garrisons Principles and how they apply to social media a bit more, you might like to check out James Farmer's work in 2004. He wrote a great paper on it. James Farmer was also the founder of Metablog as well. And his paper is it's almost as good as mine, and it's a fair bit shorter as well, so check it out. So we know now why social media and interacting online is fantastic for learning. Here's an example here of some of my gang chatting online and having a conversation about student feedback. And we've got people coming together, bouncing ideas off each other, sharing what they're doing, asking questions. We can also see the social presence here. We can see that, people have built these relationships with each other that enable them to feel safe within this environment and feel able to learn, basically. And the key to all this, I think, is reciprocity. The act of reciprocal giving of something of value. And not only is this one of Chickering and Garrison's key principles of good educational practice, the educators here will hopefully be familiar with Chickering and Garrison. It's also the golden rule of ethics and morality. It goes as far back as ancient Egyptian times, where the Egyptians felt that reciprocity was the way to have an easy afterlife, as it was. And also from the ancient Greek, we can see, this runs through. It's one of the key principles of all most religions. All religions that I can think of anyway. So I hear you asking, what can I do? What can we do that will actually kind of further this cause and get people talking to each other and sharing things, sharing their ideas? Here's a quote from Pink Fluffy Bunny Knickers himself. Wrote on someone's blog last Tuesday. Looking back, I find it amazing to think that I was never taught to nurture a network of people to help me learn. And this made me think, and I thought, well, yeah, that is funny. And then I thought, but we seem to have done okay without that. And I thought maybe it's not so much as explicitly teaching people how to build networks, but it's a question of encouraging them and enabling them to do so in a safe way. One of the ways we can do this, that slide's in the wrong order, is leading by example. But I'm going to carry on with the rest of it. Now, what we can all do, I'm hoping, like Will earlier, I don't have the answers, but I'm hoping that lots of people here will have answers about what they can do to get people sharing in whatever job that they're doing. And I guess those of you who do follow my blog will know that I'm not very technologically minded. I'm much more of an educationalist. But I get that I feel that those of us in a more kind of technical development role have a big role to play in enabling this kind of activity to be carried out more efficiently and effectively by learners, whether those are students in an institution or the people who work for that institution. So it's a question of looking at the tools we've got and analysing whether they are fit for purpose and constantly keeping that analysis going. I think customisation is a really important thing. I'm often frustrated by virtual learning environments and the lack of power as a student I would have had over them, despite the fact that I've had admin access as a member of staff. I dread to think how frustrated I would be if I was actually purely on the other end and not able to kind of pull in RSS feeds from kind of blogs and Twitter and things like that that were relevant to the courses that I was studying. I think aggregators are going to play a key role in this. Like I said, it's really nice to be able to blend the formal with the informal. And obviously we've got used to kind of having to do that, off our own backs, opening a new browser window, going to your blog or going to someone else's blog and checking out what's going on in a discussion forum that's being run by your tutor. But it would be lovely if we had more tools that allowed us to have more control over the way we view this kind of thing and pull it all together. And for those of us directly involved in educating students and facilitating the learning process, I think there's two key areas that we look at. And one of those is skills, the actual kind of technical skills, making students kind of aware and able to use the tools that will enable them to build networks and to learn. And the soft skills like, the actual act of blogging and hosting conversations and inviting those conversations to take place. Collaborative working, and the act of giving feedback on other people's, or what other people are saying. And awareness about the key issues that they should consider when they're taking part in this kind of activity online. The kind of work that Shirley and the team at Reading have been doing on digital identity. I know they've produced, if you go to the This Is Me website, they've produced some teaching materials that you can use with your students to help them to think about these key issues, and also who has access to what they're saying as well. And one of the things I'd like to leave you with is something to think about related to, anyone know who this is? Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin, of course, is very famous for producing his theory on the survival of the fittest. Now, in the biological world, the fittest are the most selfish, the people who take the most, the people who trample over the other species or the other individuals of their species to succeed. But in the social media world, the wonderful thing about social media is that the fittest, the people who survive, are the people who give the most. And if you give people something of value, whether it's ideas in your blog posts, whether it's videos that they can go on and use with their colleagues and show to other people, whatever you give of value, you will draw in followers that are interested in what you have to say and share common values. So that builds your network of useful people to talk to, useful ideas to draw on. You learn more, you get more valued kind of judgments coming off what you're saying, and you can solve your own problems better if you've got this large supportive network growing. And that, the end product of that is that gives you even more of value to give back. So that's basically it. So the key message basically is, I think I remember one thing I used to do a lot at Bath, because they've got fantastic sports facilities, is I used to do a lot of training at the gym. And above one of the treadmills was this big poster, and the text of the quote was very big. So I remember that, but sadly I don't remember who actually said it. It might have been John F. Kennedy, but the text was too small. The text of this poster was basically, if you have action, but you don't have vision, that's just passing the time. If you have vision, but you don't do anything about it, and that's just a dream. But vision and action can change the world. And that's really what I wanted to say to you today.
Thank you so much.